Mr. Casey, Economic Development Committee.
I'll break here.
Okay.
Can I be certain this is on?
The red light should.
Wesley will tell you. That's the only way we're certain.
So first off, a question for you guys. So we're here to see if you would vote to approve us issuing a request for expression of interest for Lot 3 on Ice House Road. The question is, with two of you, are you in a position to vote tonight?
Do I become a dictator?
I try not to vote on that because of living next door to it. The State Ethics Committee tells me that I'm not supposed to vote on things that might affect the value of my
You
house.
pass something with one vote?
There is the,
We have a quorum.
something about the rule of necessity or something.
If he abstains, can it be 1 to nothing to 1?
I think vote the rule of necessity, but I think if Mark is going to be here at the next meeting, I'm not sure that.
Just let him vote it. Okay.
Mhm.
Do you have a deadline or?
It's a little bit fluid.
Yeah, so not really. So we can either just come back to your next meeting,
Which I think is the 19th
19th
of August.
2 weeks from tonight.
Around 19th of August. Not a certainty.
You can get.
Yeah, we'll get some
Else.
representation here on the 19th.
Yeah.
The other question is, even if you can't vote, would you like a quick update on where we've
Sure,
been?
please.
And yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll get Sarah to help me because I've actually been traveling quite a bit the past few weeks, so I've not been here for some of the key events.
Okay.
Worth doing just a quick history of what got us here in front of you tonight?
Sure.
Okay.
Always good to educate
Yeah.
us,
Okay.
everybody.
All right. So recall, we started meeting almost a year ago. You guys voted to reconstitute the Economic Development Committee. And along about, I would say midwinter, Bob Borelli came in front of us and told us about the facility that he had hoped to put on, Lot 3 on Ice House Road, and had also informed us of the history of having been up with a citizens petition the prior year, which competed with Park and Rec and was voted down, largely because there was some confusion around those competing interests, right? So he was coming back this year. Park and Rec didn't have sort of a bid, if you will, on the lot because the prior special town meeting called for some land being set aside for Park and Rec, so they didn't have competing interests there. The Economic Development Committee voted unanimously to support his citizens' petition. Our logic was, this is potentially an attractive use for the lot. Let's, put choices in front of the town, right, so people can decide whether this is something they wanted to pursue. One thing we also told him is that we were endorsing the petition to seek use for the lot. We were not endorsing his proposal per se, right? So we kind of, and then at the town meeting itself, we got up and supported the proposal and then kind of drizzled on his parade a little bit by saying that, we would put out an RFP, have an open process, there could be other bidders, and they would have, we'd go with the most attractive use, so he wouldn't necessarily have that, an inside
I think
track.
some of the confusion was not with you guys. I think because of his publicity and the full-page ads he ran, I think people that really don't follow closely just tied one to the other.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes, and that probably distinction was lost, right,
Yeah.
in the town meeting, right? So, now here's where I'm going to ask Sarah for help because I was not.
So the Economic Development Committee started working on a draft RFP based on the process that the Economic Development Committee worked on when the Kingsbury Club was developed. That RFP was presented to the selectmen at your June 3rd meeting. Neither one of us was present, so what we understand happened was that there were some folks in the audience that expressed some concern, so it was decided to hold a public RFP review meeting, which was held on July 10th and we had a number of people in attendance, and long story short, what filtered out of that meeting was a desire to kind of water down the RFP process and do an expression of interest rather than commit to an RFP. That way, we could be a little bit looser with the requirements. One of the main issues was sort of understanding the scope of projects that may come in, very detailed questions, but then when they're asked in an RFP, it's too onerous for a respondent. So it was a little bit of back and forth about that. But the primary goal of the RFP was to get responses that complied with existing zoning and that didn't compete with the existing uses on Ice House Road. So this expression of interest indicates that we don't want the competing uses, but that we might be open to any particular use, but with the caveat that if it doesn't comply with zoning, a zoning change would be necessary. So
When you had that July 10th meeting, part of that was because the neighbors wanted to voice some opinions. I know one issue was a fence was up there, and the other, I know the Bay Circuit Trail, and I quickly, when I came in this evening, tried to read that as fast as I could. I know there was a section about preserving the Bay Circuit Trail that was in there.
I actually took the suggested language and popped it right into the expression of interest. It didn't, it made sense. It fit in, so it wasn't a problem.
And were the neighbors satisfied? Was there something
Some of,
language?
it's important to remember that it's a multi-stepped process. So the RFP, the expression of interest, the RFP, the contract, the award, it's all phases leading up to the permitting of the project. So regarding the fence issue, it was suggested that it be an 8-foot fence. Well, we have a 6-foot fence height limit. So there's no problem with requesting a fence or requiring a fence, but we'll just lighting, noise, those types of issues get vetted out during the permitting process.
Sure. So
I would go on, I would just add that the draft RFP, which we've put aside for the moment, one of the selection criteria is impact on the neighbors. So that's an important consideration.
So does the expression of interest, the next stage would be the RFP would follow?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. And then it's maybe a weak analogy, but we just heard from the Lee Chapel folks, right? And it's like if we get this study done, it will provide information to the hospital reuse committee, right? That's not what we're calling ours. What are we calling ours?
Master planning, redevelopment master planning committee.
Okay. This is somewhat analogous because some people have made the point that maybe this should be included in the overall planning for the hospital. It's a little physically distant. It's not like the Lee Chapel right in the heart of it. But this is a way to, as Sarah said, understand where interest is coming from, and it provides information to the committee so they can kind of take account of it. And then we'll have that information, and the committee will have had some time to operate over a few months before pulling the trigger on an RFP.
Makes
so
sense.
it kind of works out pretty nicely. with
Yeah,
that time.
makes sense.
Yeah. So,
See you in a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
so in conclusion, we're not asking for your vote tonight.
You got my vote. But you'll come back then on the 19th, we'll have a full board, and we'll be able to...
Well, it's possibly we won't have a full board, but we'll.
No, we will.
Oh, you'll have a full board. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we're
We'll have
meeting
a full
again on
board.
Thursday, but
So
try to get a few
we'll
more
be able to
people.
give an official vote.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Let's see now. I think we're back to vote to sign the warrant for September 9, 2014 state primary election.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Letter received from Fox Lane resident regarding placement of new street sign.
Yes, this is an individual that didn't like where the Public Works Department placed the sign, suggested another location. Ken Feeney felt that if you put it in the location where he wanted it, it would direct people to the wrong street. So he declined the individual's request to relocate it, and the individual's writing to you for a superseding order.
Well, part of this is I'm the one that noticed that the sign was missing and that recommended that in my walk, so I'm kind of the culprit with that.
Now the plot thickens.
But I actually went by, I mean, it's at the end of the street. I take it, her argument seemed to be that it was on her property. We can prove that it's our property, that's correct, the town?
I think it's within the layout, yeah. You know, people don't realize, they think the edge of the sidewalk or the edge of the curbing is the start of their property, and they don't realize in many cases the layout is 50 or 60 feet, and it goes beyond the back of the curbing or the back of the sidewalk.
But the other thing which I'm just big on the street signs is just for public safety issues. I mean, we have a lot of public safety people that no longer, they're not all from Medfield. And we have so many different streets, and it's confusing a lot. If they're racing up there and they don't see a street sign, and, you know, seconds sometimes count if you're trying to get, you know, medical people in there. And sometimes, even on fire and other, we have where each town will cover for one another. And if we're out and we have to call in someone from Millis or Dover or another town, they need those street signs to know where to get to.
Yeah, unless they have GPS capability, and then, you know, a lot of times they can use that instead. That's become more and more common.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally, I find it's good myself if you're in a neighboring town and you're looking for street, it is hard to find out where you're going. In fact, I live at 35 Nebo. I'm constantly getting people coming to my house looking for 35 Foundry.
Yeah.
And so I just have a standard direction how I give them when they come to my house. So.
But there were 2 points I thought she made, kind of a PS at the end of her letter. One, she made note about the railroad tracks at Farm Street. We can tell her that that is in the works. And the second one, she made note of a very rough intersection of Marlin and Harding. The road is dug up. Maybe we can ask Ken to take a look at that. I have noticed that. It's not potholes, but a lot of the tar has worn away, and that is kind of a rough area. So she did have kind of a point on those two. So
Sure.
the Farm Street one, we are addressing. Those tracks will be coming out. And maybe Ken could look at the intersection of Marlin and Harding. Probably some tar could go in there. But the other issue, I think, is to me, is a safety issue, that we need a street sign to let people know what street it is.
I don't know the details about the street sign, so I guess I'd like to look at that and then maybe put that over to our next meeting.
Okay.
Police chief meeting requests selectmen vote to sign MIIA grant application for Lexipol.
Yeah, MIIA is the insurance carrier we have for our public officials' liability and workers' comp and whatnot, health insurance. And they have a grant program where they will fund work on a new system that is designed to assist the police department. And the chief is the first one that scheduled to use this, so he's practically been assured that they will approve the grant for
Great.
him. So,
Yeah,
and he is,
in fact, they've actually already approved the payment, but we had to do the paperwork.
yeah.
We're kind of doing it in reverse, but they did guarantee payment of it.
Chris, the chief did tell me, but it just slipped my mind what it's about.
Lexipol is it's a national organization, and they come in and they will update your policy manual, which we've been trying to do for years.
Excellent.
We had gotten approval to do it through the warrant committee anyway, and then Maya came in and was able to fund 50% of it, which was great news. So.
Oh, good. So it's like 4,000 or something, the grant?
Yes.
thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote to sign the MIIA grant application.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Vote to approve recommendation, oh, no, we already covered that. Russ Halsey, Charter Review Committee Chair, requests selectmen vote to appoint Jack McNicholas and Neil O'Connor to the committee.
Two great people. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Medfield Youth Basketball Board requests permission to post signs promoting fall registration.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thomas Upham House requests permission to use the Baker Pond area for annual Grandparents' Day cookout on Sunday, September 7th. Also permission to set up tent on the prior day, September 6th.
So moved. They know where our property is versus First Parish, correct? Should we also, do they go into First Parish property, or are they all in the town?
The First Parish doesn't really care. I mean, they're glad.
Okay.
I bet they don't know where the line is.
No, I don't.
Most people don't.
Can we just let First Parish know that it's going to take place, so that it's not another event happening there? Okay. Oh, we do. Great. Thank you. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Next, Cypress Street neighbor requests permission to hold a block party September 20, Medfield Day, from 2:30 to 9:30.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Medfield High School Spanish National Honor Society requests permission to hold car wash fundraiser in back of Town Hall Saturday, September 6, 2014, 9 to noon.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Boston Bikes requests permission for the first all-women's bike ride to pass through a portion of Medfield on Saturday, August 16, between 10:30 and 11 a.m.
I've checked with
Committee
the,
reviewed the request.
I checked with the chief on that, and he's had no objection to it. They're going to come down Pine Street and go up North Street into Dover. So and I think they said there'd be about 30 or 40 bikes they expect. There's 3 races. I think one is 10 miles, one's 20 miles, and one's 50 miles. This is part of the 50 miles, so you won't get too many bikes.
Nice of them to ask. Not every bike ride asks.
Right, yeah.
So moved.
It's
Second.
sponsored by the town of Dedham Park and Rec, and they've sent their insurance certificate.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Medfield Library requests permission to use the gazebo area for their annual end-of-summer reading event on Tuesday, August 19.
Yeah, they just, 2 young ladies came by this afternoon and talked to Evelyn. I think with the library director leaving, we want to make sure that there is a responsible adult that is going to be in charge of it. So I think if you can check with the library staff and make sure that they're aware that this is, and that this is, in fact, a library-sponsored event.
That was actually the library staff that came over.
You're dating yourself.
Those are librarians.
I am dating myself. Then I guess I apologize. Someday she'll appreciate being mistaken, but not probably right now.
When Kristen was in first grade, I went to the parent information night, and I kept thinking to myself, why are all those high school kids up front? It was all the teachers.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yep. And it also includes a request for permission to include a bouncy house water slide. Medfield State Hospital status update. Governor Patrick signed state hospital legislation on Friday, August 1, even though he was scheduled to sign it on Saturday, August 2. Vote to sign appreciation letters to Senator Timothy, Representative Garlick, and Dooley for their diligent assistance with the hospital legislation. Do we have a motion?
I do. The other thing I just want to add, so many people deserve credit for this, and I don't like to single individuals out, but I think there's 3 in town, Mr. Massaro, Mr. Harney, and Mr. John Thompson, that deserve the thanks of not only the current Medfield residents, but generations to come that are going to benefit. And I know all 3 of them put incredible time and effort, and probably no one was more pleased when that was signed than the 3 of them. So thanks to them for all the work. We can never possibly repay you for that, but we'll do the best we can. I so moved on to our Representatives Garlick, Dooley, and Senator Timothy, who guided that through the State House. I was very nervous on that for a long time, and it was nice that they got that through.
And we actually ended up ahead of Westboro in the end.
Yeah?
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a couple of comments on the hospital, if I may?
Can we just finish our vote?
I'm sorry, yes,
I'll second that, and then,
I'm so anxious.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yep, and Mr. Massaro.
I was so anxious to say thank you, Richard, and for the compliments, and but I wanted to say that new legislation. Our legislation is now Chapter 211 of the Acts of 2014. I cannot find a copy of that yet.
I have it.
online. Did you?
I have it. It's
Okay.
not online, but it was sent to us. I have that.
So obviously, I always review every document to make sure it's exactly what was.
No, really?
Yeah. Make sure it was what was passed.
You would appreciate, Bill, that I was actually looking at the deeds that are cited in the legislation today. They're actually online over at the Registry of Deeds. You can get them online.
And I was looking at the map, the plan, the survey plan for the parcels A for parcel B, and I had some comments about calling out the wrong page references on those deeds and where they're found.
In 1890, when the state bought those, it was like 5 or 6 parcels. One of them was 118 acres, $5,200. And it's unusual, because usually the consideration is not listed in the deeds that are that old, but for some reason they did.
Yeah, what can you get for that now?
The whole parcel, the whole, well, here they are, actually. I happened to just write them on a sheet of paper that I brought with me. 7,700 for one, 5,300 for another, 5,500 for another one, 350, 700, 200. 200 got them 5 acres from Frederick E. Wright of Natick.
Well, probably if you took that and, added an inflation factor of
Yeah,
5%.
present value is probably
it'd
several
probably be
million.
right, yes.
You talked about Westboro. Westboro also was on the governor's desk, but made it about a week after we did. It's due to be signed on 8/9.
We have better legislatures than they do.
And Waltham's, but they all made it out. It's interesting. Theirs sat longer than ours did.
And Waltham got
We
through,
got
too.
through quicker, but they came out very quickly at the end.
And Bill, did you say that Waltham got through too as
Yeah,
well?
Waltham got through too. It's due to be signed by the governor on August 10th. Just to keep in mind for how documents, whether there's a delay in getting documents to us to review, because we'll be doing 2 others, pretty much at the same time. I wanted to mention that the status of what's happening up with the remediation and the restoration up at the C&D area very, very quickly. We're still waiting for an official schedule from DCAM on the remediation and restoration. I mean, the work obviously has been delayed. There were some contractual issues that DCAM had to resolve. The contract is done.
Somebody was reading that contract very thoroughly, I guess.
It wasn't me, no, I didn't even ask for a copy this time. I took a walk on the property last week. Mobilization has started. There's 2 construction trailers on the site. They've installed stakes for the new fencing that will run along the road from the laundry building down to the power plant area. There's new stakes outlining the fencing that will go around the C&D area. They built 2 bridges across the gas pipeline for heavy equipment access into and out of the C&D area. The old power plant road has been marked for widening, clearing of brush that will provide truck egress out onto Hospital Road from the C&D area, and then a clearing of unwanted vegetation it's called grubbing is tentatively scheduled to begin the end of this week.
Mhm. I attended, it was supposed to be an hour, and ended up being a 3.5-hour pre-construction meeting on the state hospital site last week. It's very sunny out. We actually, part of the problem with the construction schedule was not only the contracts, but then installing the silt fence, having that improved, putting the fencing up. So it's almost like they're hurrying up to get everything set, and then we should have a construction schedule. We're anxious to get that schedule, 1, for the work to begin, but 2, so that we can coordinate with the Hospital Road project as well. But everybody was on site, including Public Works, Conservation, and myself, making sure that the contractors are aware that the town and state have a great partnership, and we're all trying to move this forward as quickly as possible. So I did talk to John O'Donnell this afternoon, and we're really hoping to get that very soon.
And incidentally, the bids on the water tower have been advertised, and they're scheduled to be open on the 20th of August. And the Water and Sewer Board is meeting the 21st. Whether they'll be able to make an award that quickly, I don't know. But, so we do, and anything on when the water tower land will be deeded to us?
I'm actually finalizing the LDA for the water tower and the well field tomorrow, and I should have our final draft ready to go back to DCAM. the A&R plan was approved by the planning board, and that's moving forward, so we're hoping an end of September closing is what Mary Beth and I are shooting for now.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's about the time they'd like to start.
Yes.
And we're borrowing the money, I think, around mid-September. I think
Yeah.
it's around the 18th. So the treasurer collector will be in
August 19th.
August 19th, which is your next meeting, to discuss the, get your approval to issue bonds.
So we're working on the LDA for that. We're also looking at the first draft of the MOA and the existing condition survey of the buildings that are up there. As Bill mentioned, there's an issue with the easements on the survey that's been presented to us. I will talk to DCAM tomorrow regarding that. There has been discussion of easements in our negotiating meetings. Whether or not that discussion of the easements we had has coordinated with the plan that's been presented to us is up for debate, and we'll work with DCAM and the negotiating committee on that. I'm also working on the redevelopment planning committee has asked to do a walkthrough. I believe they're looking at 5 or 6 buildings. We are working on getting a license to get the interior access of those buildings. So we presented that to DCAM today. And we're also working on the license agreement for C3, which is the consultant we hired to go in and do the in-depth analysis inside 4 of the buildings. And we're just waiting for the contract to come back on that as well.
The contract from C3 or the license agreement?
I'm sorry, the license agreement to come back. It's a couple of interesting things I learned. So when there's work that's to be done on the interior of the buildings, which is what C3 is doing, all state agencies have to be polled to determine whether or not there's work going up there. And we know there's no other state agencies doing work, but protocol says they all have to be polled to make sure that nobody is doing any work up there that could affect this. So that's why the license for C3 has taken longer than, say, the license for the state hospital, hospital road contractor who has a license up there, as well as Environmental Partners, who is doing the water tower work. So
How
this
long-
one will take a little longer.
How long is the C3 one taking? Chris?
I just talked to them today, and we've pushed their interior inspection probably to the 1st or 2nd week of September, and I'm hoping to have the license agreement by the end of August. Once we get the license back, they need about 2 weeks to mobilize their team and get their hazardous material suits ready to go in the buildings. So
Just for my knowledge, the walk through the buildings would be for the buildings for the consultant to go into, or is that different?
no, the walkthrough is just for the redevelopment and planning committee to go through and see a few of the buildings. There's some people on the committee who are not aware of what the inside has looked like over the last 20 years, so they're going to go in. We're just trying to secure that access now.
Okay, might some of those be the same one that the consultant will be looking at, or they be different?
They're different.
They're different, okay.
The buildings are going in, we make sure they're safe. We can't take anybody into the buildings that are.
Yes, the ones that
So the ones
C3 are
we're
looking
going
at are
into will be
in,
the safe buildings. One of them will be, I think, one of the last buildings at the back, perhaps the R building.
yes,
And was it D3 or whatever
Yeah.
that was most recently used? It's got the new storm windows and everything else, so.
so in addition to polling all the state agencies about the planning committee walkthrough, they'll also have somebody go through to walk through the buildings to make sure they're safe to have people come in, so.
There are
Which is
some
why
of
they're
the-
limiting the size of that group that's gonna go through.
There are some of the buildings, even if they can't go into them, they should at least look inside. I mean, 10 years ago, I went in a building, and there were no floors. There was 2 feet of water, or I guess, whatever, huge amount of water in the basement of the buildings, holes in the roof. The floors had actually rotted and fallen through into the basement. So, I think some of the buildings are so bad that they at least ought to see how bad the conditions are.
I think that's it. That's what we have right now.
Let me just also thank Christine for all the work she's done on the whole hospital issue. It's an incredible amount of hours that you've spent working on it, and your leadership and stuff is appreciated, so thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you. Selectmen's report, Mr. DeSorga.
Several things. I actually met this afternoon with Ed Hinckley and with Ken Feeney down at the Route 27 high-tension line area concerning about plantings in that area. In meeting with the arborist they have, he's strongly suggesting that the type of growth that should take place should be natural to that area. And he seemed to make sense. He said you can't look at it in a 1 year, you have to look almost like a forest over many years. So in 2 to 3 to 4 years, that area will grow up with certain vegetation, as opposed to what they did on Hartford Street in Dover. And he said all the plantings that they did were on private property, where the owner agreed to take ownership of that, the plantings and water it and things like that. If you've been down Hartford Street in Dover, probably a third of the plantings are now dead. Apparently, they haven't been doing the watering. So,
There's a similar problem, high-tension lines cross, it's Elm Street in Medfield, but I don't know what it is in Walpole.
it's High Street.
High Street.
High Street, Medfield, and Walpole, they're intertwined
And
there.
they, that's the same thing, they didn't water, some of them
Yeah.
didn't water, and so that most of the plantings
It
that
did.
didn't start put in died.
But here's the good part, and I thought he made sense. He said what they will do instead is that they will plant somewhere else in the community. They will pay for, they get their trees and shrubs from Western Nursery. He said, and the thing that he likes about Western Nursery is to give a 1-year guarantee. And they will take somewhere here in Medfield, and he said, I'm not just talking about 1 or 2 trees, I'm talking about plantings of trees and bushes and flowers and shrubs that come in, because it's good PR for them. And I know Ed Hinckley suggested maybe the town garage, the new town garage area. I'd also like to maybe throw out, I know they're looking at Meeting House Pond, Baker's Pond, that area. It would be free labor and free plantings that would come in. And I'd love to take them up on that.
The other side that might be good is the pocket park.
And the pocket park, whatever, I'm not sure what type of trees and things, but absolutely.
Yeah, but, you know, they're gonna have it designed by the Garden Continuum, so they
Yep.
can give them a list of
And
plans.
he said, I said, I'm going to take you up on that. He said, please do. He said, every now and then I'd like to wear a white hat and have somebody say something good. I guess they're always yelling at him.
It gives them Tree City credit as well, because they are a Tree City company, so it gives them credit
Yes.
for that as well.
Oh,
It's
is that
great.
right? Okay.
Win, win, win.
They,
The other,
okay.
the other place that I've been pondering is the Welcome to Medfield sign when you're coming into Medfield from Sherburne on Route 27. It's on the other side of a guardrail. It's just visually, it's very difficult to see. The Garden Club has a long-term plan of actually having planters built around the base of the signs like they've done on 109 coming in from
Yeah.
Millis. That's the first one that the DPW has constructed that way. They're intending, the DPW is going to be doing one of those a year.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
But that one coming from Sherburne is in such an awkward spot because it's on the other side of the guardrail.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it should be moved. And my choice of places to move it would be down next to the new island where Hospital Road is. And that's a little far from the actual border of the town, but there is a state sign that says Medfield at the river. So it's just something to think about.
So,
And
that
might
I-
be another place to plant some things. as well.
So I thought it was positive. We could have insisted they put the same type of fir-type trees there, but this sounded just much better, and the idea of natural growth over time period. He had me look across the street, and on the other side, it almost looks like a field, because it's all overgrown with wildflowers and weeds and things, and it has that kind of rolling look. And what disturbed me before is when they first stripped all those trees, it was just barren. And now, as he said, over time, the natural vegetation comes in.
That comes back a heck of a lot faster than anything you plant in there.
Yeah.
The one thing, I don't know whether it seemed when I've gone by, it looked like a lot of it was very gravelly. And if there's any way they could throw some soil so that there'd be, I wonder if part of the reason the trees in Dover haven't died is because they didn't have good soil that they
Right.
planted them in, as well as not watering.
We have all that compost up at the transfer station. Maybe the DPW could take some down there and
Just dump it down
just
there,
give them
and,
some good
because it will,
soil to plant in.
yeah,
Part of that gravel road, they're getting a lot of activity. What's going to happen, I asked them on that, they're taking down all the wooden high-tension lines and putting up metal ones. And they're going to probably do that in October. And they're going to come through Medfield. He said it'll probably take them about 2 weeks to come through Medfield. there'll be all new metal high-tension lines, and they'll take down the wooden ones, and they just transfer the wires. And the reason for that, he said, they got burnt a couple years ago with that major ice storm up in Maine, and then there was another major one, I guess, into Canada, and they want stronger poles and lines. So there'll be metal, although he said they try to disguise them in a brownish look so that it kind of looks wood, but that will be taking place in October. But there's a lot of activity that's taking place, and he said the bulk of that activity, which is an electrical company outside that they subcontract, should be done within the next 2 weeks, he said. So eventually that road should begin to weed over and have less traffic.
Well, they probably have to maintain that road to get access for maintenance, but the good part about that is that's part of the Bay Circuit Trail. Goes through there.
Go down the high-tension lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Comes in there from.
On
behind the
27?
block. Yep.
It goes along and it comes out, well, actually, sometimes there's a water easement that goes through between a couple of houses down there off High Street, but that's technically just a water easement. It's not open to the public. It's just open
I
for
didn't realize
water
that.
department. But the alternative to that is the Edison or the N-Star right-of-way, because
Okay.
that eventually comes out on water department land behind the Wheelock School, or, behind the
Okay.
well down there, so.
N-Star, I had a great interaction with Jack Lopes this week. I had some concerns from some Cole Drive residents regarding the replacement of those wires and the transfer from the wood to the metal, and the third-party contractor had been working very late at night.
Oh, really?
And Jack was right on top of them, made sure they were aware they couldn't work past 8 o'clock, and they should be finishing up the Cole Drive work tonight. They promised me they would finish it up tonight.
Is there an
so.
out-of-state crew or something was being put up at a motel?
There are multiple crews from all over the country there. I think there's some from North Carolina, some from Maine, some from Vermont. And I recognize they're trying to get it done quickly and get back to their families, but N-Star had a great response to the people on Cole Drive.
Jack, who was so responsive, is whom?
Jack Lopes from N-Star.
From Menstar, the man from Menstar, okay.
I've just had a positive experience with him. I know with N-Star, we had some issues with the DPW garage,
Yes.
but with the pole removal and stuff, he seems to be very proactive with that. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, and maybe we can put this on our agenda sometime later in the year, but at the end of last meeting, we had some discussion of, how efficient our meetings are being run and whether we should bring in committees and things like that. I think there's a lot of value. I'm afraid if we never bring in the committees we appoint, then we never find out what they're doing. And we just had the Economic Development Committee in here, and as of last year, we restarted them. They hadn't met for something like 4 years before that. We don't know what's going to take place unless we bring them in. So I think there's value in doing that. And part of the other issue I have is, because we're a 3-member board, it's very hard, we can't discuss anything outside of the meeting, because we're in violation of the open meeting law, and rightly so, but we're, as a 3-member board. When I went to several other of the neighboring towns, their boards of selectmen, several of them have 5-member boards, one including the town of Medway, and I had a fairly lengthy discussion with a couple of the Medway selectmen of the advantages of a 5-member board. And one of the advantages, they felt they can be more efficient because with 5 members, maybe not having all those committees come in, they actually divide up. You take these 4 committees, I'll take these 5, and they go to those meetings, and then they come back, and they can give that update. And the other issue is, 2 of those members can talk to each other. Because with 3 members, we can't. With 5, then it's not a quorum, and they can do that. So, and I don't know whether a 5-member board would be better or not, but I think I would at least like to begin to look and see if there are advantages, and maybe later on in the year, we can maybe put that on the agenda for discussion. But I just think it's important that we keep track of the committees we have, and I think by having them come in is a plus.
Yeah, I think, I heard a few comments at the last meeting, and I think the problem may have been that there were too many committees in one night. You know, poor Matt McCormick thought he was gonna lose his voice by the end of the
Well,
night.
he was up all the
and
time.
down so much.
But I think what you tried to do, you tried to group like committees together.
Commonalities, yeah. And that might be a thing where you don't do anything else that night except that, and do it as a round table sort of thing where, you know, we turn the tables around and they sit around in a group or something.
Well, a little bit, that's what we were originally looking at that fourth meeting to be, to take one topic. And maybe we can get into that a little bit more, but I just see that there's a lot of value in having
I
that committee.
agree that I absolutely think it's a ton of value, and I think that that's what we should be doing, is gathering information. And that's a lot of information that we got out of that meeting about the downtown, and I'm hopeful that it'll put a process in place that will jumpstart the town planning for the downtown. So-
Well, I think, look, and Sarah said she is on track to a summit, or whatever we want to call it. She had some issues scheduling in September, but she is working on that, so I think that will be the positive thing that will come out of it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Visioning session, I think they call it.
The what?
Visioning session.
Visioning session, okay. The other thing is, I just want to make note of the passing of Jane McCarty, longtime warrant committee member. She actually, I think, was the first female chairman of the Medfield Warrant Committee. She also was very, very active with the League of Women Voters. She was active with the Historical Society. She just was a very active citizen, and so our sympathies to her family. She very much will be missed here in Medfield.
And I think most people remember her riding around town on her bike.
Yeah.
She was an avid bike rider.
Yeah,
so-
she was indeed.
Yeah.
She ran the candidates' nights for the League of Women
She did
Voters.
indeed,
Yeah.
yep. I also met with the members of the Historic District Committee and representatives from Bank of America. I had a call from some town residents and then from Sarah Reposer, our town planner, that they were digging up the bricks at Bank of America, and according to town residents that had talked to bank officials, they were going to just cement it all over. And so I was able to get a hold of John Naff, the building commissioner, as well as Sarah. He put a desist order on them, and because that is in a historic district. That's in the downtown historic district. And so they had to go before the Historic District Commission. And so a week ago tonight, we met over there with the officials, and they came back with a new plan, and they have agreed to replace all the brick. And they're going to use the same type of pavers that are in front of Brothers Marketplace. And I know some people had issues with the brick because of safety issues or slippery and things such as that. It will not be the Boston paver, the more historic one that's there now, but it will follow more the paver that is in front of Brothers Marketplace, which according to their engineer is much safer. It's more level and less apt to kind of buckle up. So I thought that was positive.
They're gonna do it the way we did it over here, where they put a.
No, it's all gonna be all brick. They're gonna do the same as it is now.
Is it gonna be bedded in stone or stoned up?
No, it's gonna be put in concrete.
In concrete? Okay.
Yeah, they're gonna dig up the existing concrete and put all new concrete in and then set the bricks in, which is much better than the sand. So I kudos to Bank of America for doing that. And I also met with John Naff again and some of the folks at Brothers Marketplace on that guide wire that's kind of in the middle of the sidewalk on South Street. Just as a safety concern, that was not there before. And in photographs that Nancy Kelly had showed that there used to be a telephone pole behind the building, and the guide wire that holds up the telephone pole ran to that. And now that the wire is already in, the question becomes, what are we going to do? And Brothers Marketplace has come up with what I thought was a good strategy. They're going to build some planters around that, so that there'll be this circular planters That way, no one's gonna come down and especially a kid on a skateboard or roller skates or a bicycle, perhaps would hit that now, I think that will be safe. So, I just keep working more and more with Roach Brothers, and I just keep seeing a very positive, community-based outfit that bends over backwards to try to meet what your concerns are, and this is just another example.
I had a call from a resident of South Street about a fence, and I talked to John Naff, and he went over, and they said if the homeowner gave them permission, they'd replace the fence, so I think they're gonna do it as well down the back of that parking lot.
They did, and I met with John on that, that's actually my next item here, and I actually went to the 3 houses over there and informed the people that if they give permission to put up the fence, Roach Brothers will replace that. It ends basically where the parking lot takes that 90-degree turn, so they'll continue the new fence all the way down to the end of the property line where the library parking is, and then run it up to the end where the town property begins by the library. So they're going to replace all that as well. So I thank Roach Brothers again for that. Congratulations to our state reps and Senator Timilty, and also Mike, I thought you put together a nice letter that came from this board. The cell tower legislation did not pass. Had that passed, the local communities would have lost jurisdiction as to where cell towers could be located. And the Evergreen Way issue, I guess, has been postponed until October the 8th, I believe is the date. And I got an email, I'll just take a second to read, from Dave Maxon concerning that, and also a suggestion of this board, which I think, Pete, you've raised a couple of times. If I can find
Putting
his
out
letter
bid
here.
specs for the cell tower antennas.
Yes, the RFP. Let me just take a second. This is from Dave Maxon, and he says, "No time like the present to issue a RFP for cell tower site on the new water tower. AT&T will jump at the Dover-Sherburne School site because of opposition to the Evergreen Way site, which is the likely reason for postponing the hearing. In my mind, it is now or never for replacing an RFP for the alternative of using the state hospital water tank replacement. The RFP would, one, that it is subject to town meeting approval, which has successfully been done at another water tank in town twice. Two, that it is subject to construction of the water tank, which is expected to be completed by perhaps spring of 2015 or a later date. And three, that the site is a preferred location under the bylaws. The only hitch is there seems to be a concern about whether the bond will be spoiled taxability by the projected commercial use. There are apparently 2 angles. One, the money spent on pre-fitting the water tower out of the project capital for the commercial use, like conduits and mounting brackets, must be less than 5% of the project costs. It is less. 2, this one I do not get. I do not think anyone has been able to pin down, as there might be a restriction based on the projected revenues. To me, this one does not make sense, but we need an answer soon. We can issue an RFP right away if we put the caveats in even without town meeting approval. One site benefit, technically better coverage, more population than the Dover site. Our site is dependent upon the completion of the water tank. Their site benefits, it matches coverage from proposed site. The school board is ready to move there. Their site, on a negative, who knows what the outcome will be of the tower being on school property. Will there be Dover citizen uproar? And the competitive factor, a tower company is proposing a tower on behalf of AT&T, would likely be less interested in doing a deal on a water tower, although AT&T is in the driver's seat on that. Glad to discuss this at your convenience. So I don't know whether this is something.
Mike has been working on this, and he's going to work out an RFP with Dave Maxon.
Yeah, I talked to town council about this issue, about how you put a bid up for a site on a water tower before the water tower is built, then there are two issues. One, we don't own the land yet, but we anticipate that will be coming soon. And second, we don't have the tower yet, so, but you have to put all kinds of contingencies in. And then there has to be approval under the bylaw, so it has to be contingent upon them being able to obtain approval on the bylaw as well. So there's a couple things we have to do. So I'm gonna call Dave. He's got, as Pete pointed out, he's got a bid spec for the old tower, the Mount Nebo tower, that we can use as a basis to start, so.
Okay, great. Again, just congratulations to the Pan Mass riders, particularly the 47 riders from Medfield that went through the town, and our police department for their work.
They didn't have the best of weather this time.
No,
But
rain
I
on
think maybe
Saturday.
for bike ride, it's better, you don't get overheated, so.
And could you, I talked to the Chief Meany, those double signs, one right in front of each other on North Street by the crosswalk at First Parish Church. Chief says it's up to the highway to move. The signs are back to back. You can't read the one behind. If
Is this on the church side?
it's on the church side, all they need to do is take the sign behind it and post it underneath the other sign. But right now, you cannot read the one behind because the sign in front blocks it.
Yeah, although you do have to watch out how low you put the signs, because you gotta worry about bike riders coming along and hitting it, or wheelchairs.
Or maybe it needs to be put somewhere else. Right now, you can't read it because the sign in front
Yeah,
blocks
they'll
it.
figure it out, yeah.
And did you have any chance to check with Columbia Gas, whether they're responsible for the tar in front of Zebras and 34 South Street?
Ken is gonna talk to them. He is hoping, he doesn't have a final answer for them, that they were waiting for multiple locations in town and do them all at once.
Okay.
So, but we don't have a final word
So
on
that was
yet.
their doing?
Yes. We're just hoping they will come fix it.
Okay.
He said usually they do, and sometimes they wait until they have more than one site to do. So I will get confirmation from him about that either way.
Okay, and the last thing, and I think at point we need to bring the chief in on this, just the whole traffic issue. And I think now the popularity of Brothers Marketplace, I think we knew was going to increase, and we're in the summer season, not the crowded season. But at 12:15, I don't know, was it train or what, but it took me 11 minutes to go from South Street to CVS, 7 minutes. On South Street, I waited through 2 green lights because the 109 traffic had come right across through the intersection, blocking that.
I'd say there's 2 or 3 trains a day coming through now that we never used to have, and it messes up 109 to a fairly well, so.
And I know I got some complaints, probably the only complaints on Brothers Marketplace, everything has been just a positive thing, but some of the delivery trucks have been huge, tractor trailers.
We did talk to them when we were over there, and they were looking into that. They realized it was a problem, and
Yeah,
they don't, more than us, they don't want to offend their customers. So
Right.
they want to make sure that either, A, they schedule their deliveries before the store opens, or that they try to figure out a way to
I
thought Fit 'em they in talked there.
about scheduling.
They were. It isn't always possible. They probably have trucks coming in all day long, and it's hard to get everybody, but they were trying to figure out a way to maybe put them over by where the dumpster is, and so that they wouldn't be interfering with the parking.
but some of them, they're gonna need smaller trucks. I mean, some of these huge tractor trailers wouldn't fit in the parking lot.
Yeah, some of them parking on Main Street or on South Street.
Yeah. The chief is working, we do have a traffic study that's taking place right now. He's trying everything possible. He's trying to see, they did make a change. He's trying to evaluate how that's working right now. Part of the problem is there's just too many cars.
Who's doing the traffic study?
We have, he received a grant, who was that from?
I think it's from MAPC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're looking at the 3 lights.
Oh, that's to redo the software? Is that the one that we were talking about on the phone? or-
No, this is different.
He sent another memo today that he's looking into whether it would make more sense to replace the software and the computers in the lights rather than try to reset the timing.
Yeah.
But it's something he's got to look into. And the other thing he spoke to you about was a crosswalk on Main Street somewhere in the vicinity of Upham Road. I have some concerns about that because if you have too many crosswalks in a short distance, you get very impatient drivers, and if people are trying to get through the light, I walk up through the center a lot in the morning, and when people see that green light after they come through 27 and they want to make North Street, they're hell-bent on getting through that light. And if,
Well, they can't possibly because there's 50 cars in front of them, usually.
well, not always, it depends on the time.
It doesn't have to be Upham Road, but you have Park Street Books on one side, you have the butterfly tree on the other. And the chief has admitted, I've seen a heck of a lot more pedestrian traffic in the past couple of days now that Brothers Marketplace, which I think is good. We're putting a lot more people into the downtown. The distance between crosswalks, to think that you're gonna cross at North Street or go all the way down to Noon Hill Grill, is just not gonna happen. People are crossing
Yeah.
in front of that area.
I think we need it, I think we
And
need
you
that
maybe
Upham
could do it
Road
by
area.
Miller Street. The issue he had on Upham Road is when it's steep, and then when you come across, Needham Bank's property is very close, and you need, because of ADA, quite a turnaround.
Yeah.
Or whether they could do it on Miller Street and come across. I just think, safety-wise, it would make more sense having I agree with you don't want too many, but I think that's not too many, because the nearest one is either North Street or all the way down by Noon Hill Grill.
Well, the big fear, I think, is that I've read, is to encourage people to think they're safe because they're in a crosswalk. And if you've got cars trying to make a light, they're not always watching out for people in the crosswalk. They're more interested in watching out for the light to see if they can make it through before it changes.
I would tilt, Mike, to having the crosswalk over that fear, because I'd want the crosswalk there for the people to have that security of having the right of way.
But they don't, oftentimes they don't have that security. They think they have the security, but they
Well, it's-
really don't.
Yeah, and
If you've got a careless
Right.
driver, and we know there are careless drivers out there just from the cell phone use that you see
Yeah.
these days, there's,
That's a-
But right now, they're running across the street.
That's an
and that
enforcement
scares me a
issue.
little bit.
That-
you should see them on the half-school days with the skateboarding across the street.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that I love when you go to the schools, the skateboards are lined up there, the kids that commute by skateboards.
doing a lot of damage to the steps and
Oh, do they?
curbs and everything.
Oh.
And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
I'll just mention that I did go to the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment master planning meeting to listen to them get going on their stuff, and they did seem to make a bunch of decisions to get things moving, so that's good. I was interested in my selectman office hours. There was a lot of discussion about the parking, especially at Roach Brothers, because of, my observation is that the Roach Brothers parking lot is basically full every time I've noticed it. I just glance in, and that's gonna be my new business. I'm gonna hire high school kids to park there, and then I'm gonna sell the spaces for $3. Have an app like they do in Boston for parking spaces.
It'd be interesting to find out how many of the customers in the back part are library patrons as opposed to,
I think it's mainly Roach Brothers is my guess, but it'll be,
well, of
yeah. I
course,
think
that may die down after a week or two. There's a lot of curiosity factor right now. Everybody's going over to see what it's like.
Right.
So-
One of the suggestions that I thought was really good from someone was that the library should have boxes to return books at remote areas. For instance, up at the center or maybe at the schools, and so that you don't have to go to the downtown to return your book to the library and
The other
park
hand,
in.
We want people to
encourage
come
people to
downtown.
come downtown.
Oh.
Revive it.
The other suggestion was to, you'll like this one, Richard, was to tear down the Historical Society building and move the Historical Society into the library. Other people chimed in to move it into the Dwight Derby or the Lowell Mason House, actually.
There's some talk about putting it at the Lee Chapel.
Yeah.
So, but I think that there is a big parking issue coming, and I think that we're gonna have to focus on that. Sarah apparently has been doing an inventory. I thought she was doing a study to come up with some suggestions, but apparently she's been more doing an inventory.
I'll check with her. She emailed me and said she made copies of the report that
they're
was
in
on
the-
the agenda at the
folders.
last meeting. Oh, they're in your
She did.
folders, okay. That was a report that was on the agenda last meeting. It's a traffic study that was done, funded by, actually McCready. And it basically, as I said to you on the phone this afternoon, it sort of defines the problem. It doesn't offer solutions.
Right.
It tells you
Right.
that their conclusion sort of is, there is no real problem right now, but there may be one. They have some 85% factor that they use. If you go by, they check the lot so many times a day, and if it isn't at least 85% full, they say there's not a parking problem. Well, they should have come by Monday or Wednesday, so they would have found.
Well, my concern would be that people stop parking along South Street right by that, and that just narrows that you gotta wait to go around if they can't get into, Brothers
Particularly-
Marketplace.
Well, if that happens, you'll have to post that no parking because the buses have to turn there.
Yeah, I've already
They
seen
need a
a
turning
pickup truck
radius.
blocking South Street because it wanted to get out of Brothers Market, and there wasn't really enough room for it, so
Yeah, yeah.
I think we're gonna run into that type of,
But-
and there were enough cars backed up that it couldn't pull up all the way out, so I think we're on the cusp of problems.
Yeah.
Good problems, though.
Yeah, oh
Good
yeah,
problems
it's
to have.
nice problems to have too much business.
And I remember a couple of years ago when everybody worried that your downtown was going to die, and now it seems to be bouncing back all over the place. So.
Yeah, it was nice to see the, whatever it is, the karate studio open behind the town
Yes.
hall now,
Yeah.
next to where I parked tonight. Saw some kids walking in front of my car that I didn't expect to be walking in that area.
You come in with a black belt to the selectmen's meeting one night. We'll
Yeah,
have some
yeah, right.
respect for you. So.
The MBTA has signed off on the town taking those granite blocks.
It's
that-
great.
That we looked at one time.
Nice job on
The other
that.
thing that I've been looking at is, and I guess it was, I subscribed to this email newsletter from something called Efficient Government, I think it is, and through them, I ended up with a company called OpenGov, and they are basically a company that will put your budget online. To me, it's a very interesting idea. I sent it along to Gus Murby and Mike, who's the chair of the warrant committee, Mike
Or Gucci.
Mercucci, to see if it would be useful for them, because the person that was talking to me about it thought that it would make their job much easier. To me, it's nice because you get very nice visual graphics as to pie charts as to where the spending's going and that type of thing.
What do they put, every single budget on there?
Yeah, you can put, yes.
And they
You
do
can put
graphs
down
and
to the
stuff with it?
individual checks.
And they do graphs and pie graphs and
Yeah,
things like that?
Yeah,
with it?
yeah.
Yeah, I
It
think
would
you
cost
could.
$7,000 a year for Medfield to do that, which isn't too much, but, it gets you, the people in town would get a huge amount of data, information. I mean, you can go on the Massachusetts state website and you can drill down to individual checks on the state website now.
Yeah, I forwarded your email to the superintendent and the library because it's no problem putting the budgets on. Some of the communities, I think Boston or maybe the state government, want to put every check on that's issued.
State government has every check.
And there are some issues that the schools may have with that because of special education confidentiality requirements and, depending on where the checks are being issued to. And there are also some privacy requirements for employees in terms of payroll deductions and withholdings. So it gets a little complicated
Yeah,
on
I
the,
don't know if you get down to that level of detail, but, it's something you'd have to look at, I suppose, and
yeah.
make a determination on.
It depends. I think some of them have got down to the level where they put every check online, every check that's issued, but I think that gets to be too much information. It gets overwhelming and people don't get any benefit. I think a summary, it's like we're talking about the budget. Sometimes if you combine 3 or 4 budgets into one budget, they understand. Like we were talking about with the police, we have 3 different police budgets. Maybe it'd be good to have one police budget and one fire budget rather than 2 budgets, but within those budgets, break them down separately. So, because if I said to you, what's our police budgets now? You probably would have a hard time. You'd have to go into the warrant report and add up the 3 different amounts
Right.
to figure it out. So,
Right. Or Ken Feeney, who has like a dozen different budgets.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, in general, I guess I default to more openness, and I especially like the idea that I thought it might help the warrant committee do their work faster. I thought that might be the most positive thing. And that's it. Anything under the informational that we should be letting people know about?
Yeah, there, of course, the code that you've got displayed there, the codification committee has now had the first version of the code published, and
Is
it's
this-
available online. It contains all the town bylaws, the town
So
charter.
we do have it on the town website now?
Great.
Yes, or is it on there yet, Chris?
Oh, yeah, it was on actually before the printed books came
Oh,
out.
okay.
Great.
Yeah. And that'll be updated every year. There'll be funds included every year in the town budget to keep that updated. There was a letter that came from Archbishop O'Malley inviting all public officials to a mass for public safety personnel and families on September 21st at the Holy Cross Cathedral in Boston. So if any of you want to go, Evelyn has the letter on that inviting you. Norfolk County Advisory Board has sent us their assessment. People may wonder, how much do we pay for county government? And Medfield's assessment is, for fiscal 15, which is the year that just started, is $114,472. It covers the agricultural school, it covers the county engineering department, it covers the golf course, county golf course in Quincy, I think it is. And there's several other items. It covers maintenance of the courthouses, I believe, not operation of the judicial system, but maintenance of the court buildings.
A lot of the courts are state-run now.
And, well, the state runs it, but doesn't pay
I think
enough
the
for
state
maintenance.
pays.
Their rent is.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not positive.
And then it covers the registry of deeds and a number of other functions, so.
So that's $10 a person in Medfield, more or less.
Yeah. The town accountant has put together a useful sheet on what we have appropriated and expended so far since the inception of the hospital project, so you may find that interesting. I think it's, about $800 and some thousand in total that we've appropriated so far. Bill, you may want to get a copy of that, take a look at it, so. Evelyn went to a meeting this week. I had to meet with the lawyers on the Redgate Farm case, and Chris had to go to a hospital meeting, so Evelyn went over to a meeting at the Walpole Town Library. Our contract with Wheelabrator Millbury is a 20-year contract, but next year it'll reach the 10-year mark, and there's a reopener clause. So Evelyn, do you want to quickly fill them in on what transpired at the meeting?
Let's see. There were about 14 towns at the meeting, and no one had any real issue with Wheelabrator. However, decisions have to be made as to if we want to hire a consultant to help with negotiations for the second half of the contract, and also then legal counsel to review anything that is, put together. Right now, we're paying $74 and
81 cents, I think, yeah.
yeah, per ton. It started out at about 65, but there's a 2.5% increase annually. It was suggested that we look at perhaps other companies to get a better rate, which they would like to do. And several of the representatives said they would be on that team to work out, some issues. Then a person said that he knows someone who works at Wheelabrator who told him Wheelabrator was thinking of selling. And that afternoon, an announcement came that they did sell to, Energy Capital Partners.
Yes, it's an outfit somewhere in Connecticut. It's a very large outfit
Very
that owns
large,
power
yeah.
plants and incinerators
Right.
and whatnot, so.
For like $194 billion.
Oh, so we're no longer under Wheelabrator anymore? They're gone?
Well,
Well, not,
yeah, there'll still be a Wheelabrator, but it will be under different ownership. Right now, it's owned by Waste Management, and Waste Management sold the Wheelabrator division. I think there's a press notice in there with Evelyn's minutes
in the folder.
that gives you
So,
information on the company.
Another meeting is going to be called very soon to find out how they expect the towns to work on the contract.
And, you know, we talk about regionalism all the time. That's one area where you don't realize it, but we negotiated as part of, I think, a 20-town consortium on a contract so that we would get a better deal on it by having strengthened numbers. And that's the second time. The first 20-year contract ended, we entered into another one. So that's a case where voluntarily we've been able to work cooperatively and on a regional arrangement to negotiate that. So
Well, that must have been, I'll date myself, but that was my final year on, my first time I was on the Board of Selectmen. It must have been 1983 that we went with them. So that would have been the 20 years, would have been up in 103.
yeah.
And now this is the 10, 13.
Yep.
Right?
Time flies. The copy of the Orchard Street Bridge Inspection Report, it's still in very good shape. I think it was 777 the last time for the substructure, the decking, and the superstructure. This time I think it was 776. There was some spalling on the undercarriage, concrete spalling. nothing
So it's
serious.
safe?
So, very safe, yeah. And we keep those copies of the reports on file. The state comes out and does inspections, I think it's every 5 years. Board of Appeals decisions are included, information from the Conservation Commission. That letter that you referred to earlier about the Bay Circuit Trail. I think we're okay on the Bay Circuit Trail because the way the zoning works, you are required to maintain a 100-foot heavily landscaped buffer between a residential use and any use on industrial property. So a 100-foot wooded buffer will provide an adequate route for the Bay Circuit Trail, I'd say. One other thing, in case, I don't know whether you noticed it or not, but the front door is blocked off, will be blocked off for about 2 to 3 weeks. We finally started on refinishing the front door, and when he finishes that, he'll refinish the back door. So it's the same gentleman who did the gazebo, did such a nice job on the gazebo last year.
He's a local guy. He does a good job, yeah.
Yes, he does an excellent job,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing, Mike, maybe you have the answer to this. When I believe it was in the gun bill that passed the legislature, there's a clause, and I know we received an email from the superintendent of schools, something dealing with resource officer that it said contact your superintendent. Do you know what's going on with that?
I haven't had a chance to talk to the superintendent about it, but there is a provision in there that every school district must have at least one resource officer, which generally is a policeman, in the schools. So I
Every
guess
school or just the high school?
every school district, so I assume it's
Oh,
one.
okay.
It could be one resource officer for all schools, or it can be at the high school. It seems to me that that would be considered a mandate, and that communities that don't have resource officers currently should be, and that's what I want to talk to them about, and the chief. I know they've been talking about it for a number of years, going back to Bob McGuire, about putting a resource officer full-time in the schools. It's very expensive, and it seems to me if the state is mandating that, then they ought to pay for it. But
And the other, do we have any update? I noticed that in both the city of Boston and the town of Belmont, I believe, they picked up the West Nile virus. Is there any further communications with the trustees of reservation as to whether they will allow spraying? We probably lost most of the spraying time.
I think their position last time I talked to Dave Lawson was that they had felt they had missed the opportunity for this year, so that the negotiations will go on for next year. We do get reports weekly. They do sampling in all the towns. They do several locations in Medfield, and they will sample mosquito population. And we, as far as I know, we haven't gotten any reports yet of any.
Let's say we do, is that something that would constitute, something that our Board of Health or the State Board of Health could mandate spraying on their property?
The State Board of Health would have to mandate in order to override the people that have excluded the spraying on their properties. The State Department of Public Health can override that and make a declaration of emergency so it can be sprayed. I've heard people talk on some of these shows. Since Dave Lawson came up, it's like when we had the debate over what color to paint the water tower. I never missed a water tower, no matter where I went. Well, now it's mosquitoes. Now, every time I hear a program on mosquitoes, I listen to it. And the feeling is that very few people die from Nile virus. It can be debilitating, but it's not life-threatening. So they don't feel that that's an emergency, as opposed to EEE, which can be very, very dangerous. So I think the question is, and my understanding, there have been no human cases of West Nile so far this year. Now, we're just starting to get into the heavy
Usually it's the
season.
fall, right, September.
Yes, yeah. So there is potential for human involvement, but right so far there hasn't been. And I don't believe there's been any mosquitoes at all that have been trapped that had the EEE virus. So,
There was 2 that had the West Nile virus,
yeah.
Boston and,
Yeah, it's surprising because they're in the city. The other thing I read about Boston that was very interesting, they found the green emerald, what do they call it? The what? Ash borer, yes.
In the Arnold
In
Arboretum.
Arnold Arboretum.
yeah.
You know, and it's not the same one that was in Worcester, but it's another one that's, yeah. But it's very dangerous, you know. I could just see if they have to take down a bunch of trees in the Arnold Arboretum, what a crisis that will be.
Well, the city of Worcester took down thousands of trees,
Yes.
thousands of
And
trees.
they still have to take more down. They've had another outbreak, I believe, so.
So that raises the issue that we have of the woolly adelgid at the Metacomet tennis courts. Are we gonna treat that?
I think they were looking into that. I think Park and Rec has been talking to Mike Leaders.
Yeah, okay.
I think they recommended that you cut it and then before you treat it.
Mike Leaders said that you spray horticultural oil a couple times a year.
Yeah. So they are looking into that. The problem is these things are so widespread. They're on private property. I mean, I've seen those.
Those are on our property.
Yes,
town
I know.
property.
But they're, in addition to that, they're all over private property. I mean, I've seen those things for years that he had there, and I thought they were like little chili peppers. They looked like little chili peppers almost, so.
But I think that it's important with those, that woolly adelgid, that the town does take some action on it, because, I mean, we're gonna spread it to our residents.
And we have, as they indicated tonight, the town was very prompt in removing it from the buildings.
Oh, yeah, no, those vines, but the insects that are on the hemlocks need to get sprayed, I think. I think
Yeah,
we need to
and-
bite the
and
bullet
they've-
and spend a little money to spray them.
Okay, I know that Jim Snyder's been talking to Mike Leaders about that, so
Okay.
whatever he's recommending, I'm
good.
sure they'll do. We, as Ken indicated, we don't really have anybody that can spray anymore,
Yeah,
Everybody
all right.
gave up their licenses because the state made it so difficult. Every time you turn around, the state seems to make things more complicated for us, but.
So, Richard, one of the things that I thought we should do before we adjourn is to decide what we're gonna be doing at our next meeting or two.
Good idea.
At our next, the tour of the Public Works Garage is off. Mike's gonna reschedule that. On August 19, we have Georgia coming in to talk about the year-end revenue, expenditure results, and borrowing. And we're also going to, I guess, hear from you about your talking to the people in the other towns at their boards of selectmen. We've also indicated that we would do Mike's review and
Our
evaluation.
goals.
And our goals
Yeah.
at that meeting. So that's a very full meeting.
Yeah.
September 3 has Economic Development Committee coming in to discuss RFP for Lot 3, but I don't know that that still makes sense, Mike, is that?
Well, if he's coming in on the 19th to meet with you, it probably is not going to make sense. He's probably going to cover all that he can.
Yeah.
And-
The
and-
19th.
Don't we have the hospital folks coming in on the
They're coming in
second?
on the second as well. We just
The
confirmed
hospital folks will
that.
come in
That's
on the
first meeting
second.
in September.
Oh,
So the 19th can be Lot 3 of,
Although we
19th
have
of
so much
August.
stuff on the 19th already, that it might make more sense if Economic Development can stay on the second.
Oh, okay,
Well, I'm sort of throwing that out. Does that make sense?
sure.
And
The
then,
the only suggestion I have is, we give enough time between each, because I hate when someone sits there an hour over their appointed time waiting. You know what I mean?
right,
If we're gonna schedule the hospital, leave enough time, don't have the economic folks come in till 8:15 or whatever.
all right, so
Just
shall we schedule them at 7 and 8,
something like that,
so that we give an hour to the hospital?
yeah.
And then have the
So they're
economic
not
people come
sitting
in
and
at 8?
waiting.
Yeah, I
That
agree,
sounds
that
good.
makes sense.
Yep.
We should, and then,
So the goals will be when?
I
The
think I was
19th?
I'm gonna do on the 19th.
Okay,
So that's evaluation and the goals.
looks good.
And then the public safety building on the 16th.
The tour of it.
No, they would come and talk to us.
Oh, public safety, okay. Yeah, we really haven't seen them in a while.
No. And then water and sewer comes, talk about the water tower. And then the DPW superintendent's gonna discuss roads and sidewalk maintenance and construction, which is what he did tonight, so I guess that doesn't make sense.
But this maybe brings up, somehow, whether we need a summit again, but I'm just not comfortable, just the relation between the water and sewer and the superintendent, on the budget, and, I mean, that still, it seems to be up in the air with that.
Weren't they gonna get back to us on, I thought they were gonna confer and talk about that amongst themselves and get back to us with recommendations.
That's,
so that-
are they
so that
coming back on
Both the
that?
cemetery commission and the water and sewer board get more involved in the budget processes and.
But the budget process, when do we kick off the first warrant committee, in November?
Yeah, is it the
November 4th.
4th?
So you'd want the, I would think, water and sewer and cemetery to come in before that, so that they can be working on that budget process,
Could
right?
I
Yeah.
make a suggestion? I think you'd have much better luck if you went to the water and sewer board.
Oh, good idea.
Sometimes I think with cameras and
Yeah.
people are not gonna say what they think.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay,
When do they meet?
Their next meeting's on the 21st, but that's pretty busy. They have that woman that wants to tear down the house and put up houses in Dover.
And get Medfield water?
Yeah, get Medfield water and sewer.
although that sounds like an easy.
When do they meet in September?
answer.
When do they meet?
I have to look, I don't know if they've
Yeah,
slipped
we
our
don't
meeting
know.
yet.
Yeah.
But they usually meet once a month?
They travel quite a bit, so sometimes they have to revamp their schedule based on.
Could
their
we
travel.
maybe go on their September meeting?
Probably. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
we'll
we-
find out when that is and see if we can go.
It'd be
there.
nice if we get that all straightened out before the
And then how do we
budget.
deal with the cemetery commission? Do we invite them back here? Because they don't seem to meet, so, unless they come to see us.
Well, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they should meet and we can go. Maybe that'll get them to meet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd invite them back, I think,
Okay.
probably, yeah.
so maybe the cemetery commission could come on this,
On 28th, we just
30th.
have thanks for the, we got the State Hospital Committee. Council of Aging, maybe on the 21st? Council of Aging Cemetery, that could be close. We put that maybe on the 21st.
you think that we can have the, well, the water and sewer board is gonna come here.
Oh, want them on the 30th?
Yeah, why don't we just
Okay.
invite the cemetery then?
Okay.
Invite the cemetery commission on the 30th, Mike? September
30th of
30th?
September.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Good, good.
we're done.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard DeSaga, and you are watching Medfield.tv.
Access to our community.